screen tells me I need to restart my computer, and I am not going to do that right now. So we are just going to go with my name on the screen. So welcome everybody. This is a class that I love to teach. This is one of the things that takes up the vast majority of my job. Just to kind of introduce myself, I recognize a lot of the names in here. Oh, my internet connection is unstable. Who is that? Is that mine? Hopefully not. Anyway, well, my name's Amy DeMars. I am the broker in charge for Courtney Carter Homes. Been doing this for a long time. I am the education chair, you know, and we are really trying to push out some classes to you guys while we're doing this. I'm sorry it took us so long to kind of get up and running, but everybody was running a little crazy. If you have any suggestions at all for classes that we could bring to you, please let us know. You can either do that in the chat function down here or just email Jabor or me or anybody. We would love to get some ideas. We do have a commercial class going on Thursday. Brock Goss is going to show everybody how to write a kind of a simple letter of intent to kind of get a commercial lease process started. So if you've ever been interested in that, he's going to be doing that Thursday at 10. And then we've got some more stuff coming next week. But really, so this is searching public records. Why this is important is we're real estate agents. We sell houses, but we also sell all of the land, everything around it. We sell properties. And so if you are selling a property, you don't just need the basic information of bedrooms, bathrooms, all of that kind of stuff. You really do need to know everything about what that property is. And that is part of what the Real Estate Commission tasks us with, is to be doing that, to be, you know, doing our due diligence, helping our buyers and our sellers know as much as they can about the process ahead of time. And I will say that when you'll see this, I was telling people before everybody jumped on, but I'm going to be sending you, or Heather's going to be sending you some handouts that I use. One of them is a step-by-step instruction for this class where you really can go line by line and figure out how to do all of this stuff. So if you forget what I've said, or just, you know, if you want to hand it out to other people or teach other people how to do this, you'll be able to do that with this handout. One of the other things that I'm sending along is my checklist, though, for buyers, and one for listings. And it shows on those, you know, what you should be collecting before you list the house, what you should be collecting while it's under contract, and same thing before you put buyers under contract, while they're under contract. And you'll notice that every one of these public records is before they go under contract. Why that's important is, you know, for many reasons. Like if you've got a buyer who's on the cusp of how much they're pre-qualified for. So if they're pre-qualified up to 200,000 and they are between two houses and really trying to figure out which house they should go for, and if you would have pulled the flood maps for both and seen that one of them was in a flood zone and one of them wasn't, well, that flood zone may actually take one of those houses out of their price range if they have to get flood insurance on it. So these would be things that would be good to know before you go under contract. The other thing that is super helpful is things like when we're looking up, you know, state of roads and the road maintenance. If you know that they're with, you know, I'm going to pick on Navy Fed for a second. I love Navy Fed for a lot of things, but they usually will not loan on homes that do not have state maintained roads or city maintained, so government maintained roads. So if you're looking at a house and you've pulled that road maintenance and you see that that is private road maintenance and that there is no, you know, agreement that they're going to accept on file, if you know that at the beginning, you might want to shift them to a different lender who will not make that a problem. But to know that up front and to know that that's going to be a problem, so you can speak to that lender at the very beginning. Sorry, yeah, I'm seeing your things. My video is not working. And the only suggestion that it gave me was to restart my computer, and I don't have time to do that. So we are just going with my name. But most of this is going to be a screen share where you're just going to be seeing you know, the screens. So it shouldn't be a problem. If for some reason that doesn't work, we will have to refigure this out. But earlier, Heather could see my screen, so I think we are good on that. So I'm going to start getting going here, but like I said, those are the reasons why we teach this class. All of this is important, and it's interesting too. You know, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going kind of line by line. We're going to start with flood maps. We're going to look at the aerial views of those as well. We're going to look at plat maps, at deeds, at sketches, septic permits, sewer permits, restrictive covenants, and roads. We're going to go through all of it. And I promise you that once you get used to doing this, you can probably pull every one of those records in 10 minutes. Most of these are all on the same website. If they're not, they are all really close by. So one of the important things that you're going to want to do, I'm going to start screen sharing now so that you can kind of see where we are here. So is everybody seeing the Google? Sorry,
yes.
Heather, can you see?
Yeah, sorry. I forgot
cool.
I was muted.
I know, I'm like, everybody's muted, which is great, but I don't know. Okay, so what you want to do, if you see up here at the top, I've got everything saved that I use on a daily basis. If you need help with bookmarking and all of that kind of stuff, just, you know, ask around in your office, but saving bookmarks can save you a lot of time. So where we're going to start, most everything that we're doing is right here, onslowcountync.gov. So this is one of the things that I have bookmarked and I use it all of the time. The only other sites that we're going to click on at all, I'm going to take you to NC Flood Maps. This is the government site for NC Flood that the insurance agents use to determine some of that. But that is not the site that we're going to go over mostly. I just want you to know where it is. It can give you some really good information, but that is new to this presentation. Mostly what I want to concentrate on are the government websites that all work together, and that is onslowcountync.gov. And then the only one that we go to that's not in there is where I'll show you where to look up the road maintenance, okay? So those are the only websites you know. They're all on the handout, and I will give those to you. The one other thing that if you guys want to write down, or I'll send this along, or Heather can send this along as well, but this is the very top when you get the Searching for Public Records document, www.reference.com is a fantastic site. I'm going to pull it up real quick so you can see what it is. So Al Wagner has set this up. These are useful websites for realtors, and that's exactly what it is. It does what it says on the tin. If you look on here, you'll see the Flex login, the Onslow County sites. That is where we're going to be doing a lot of our stuff. But if you scroll down, you'll also see, you know, dot loop, zip forms, HUD homes, if you ever needed any of that. If you need to look up anything from the Secretary of State, if you need to know, you know, a business LLC, or, you know, who the managing partners are. I mean, millions of things. But then he also has it broken down into Carteret, Craven, Duplin, Jones, New Hanover, all of those. Every one of these counties works slightly differently. I'm going to focus on Onslow because that's where Jacksonville is. But also because the Onslow County website is, I think, better than any of these. A lot of these other counties are kind of trying to model some of theirs on ours. Ours are great, but lots of things. And then HOA links, if you've ever needed all of that kind of stuff. So, and if you ever find a problem within this site or whatever, if you email Al, he'll change it. But it is just a great resource. And I always put that at the top of this presentation, just in case you need little links to stuff. So we are going to start with flood maps. So I'm going to go to NC Flood Maps first, just so you can see how this works. So this is a great site. I have not played around with it tons, but if you, so if you didn't know, our preliminary flood maps are going to take effect June 19th. That, who knows, may be slowed by everything that's happening now with COVID-19, but you're going to see what the preliminary and current maps look like when we go to GIS. But do know that houses are changing, possibly in June, where, you know, they may have been in a flood zone before and they may not be after June 19th. They may have not been before, and they may be starting on June 19th. So these are things that you need to look for. The GIS site where we're looking does show both. It shows the current and it does show the preliminary that should take effect on the 19th, but please do be aware that you should be looking at both. The other thing is that the city of Jacksonville is not changing on the 19th. They had some issues with the flood maps, and they are, it's going to take them a little bit longer. But when we look at the GIS maps, you will still see the preliminary ones, so you will still see what they think might happen. But just please be aware that June 19th should still be that date. I haven't heard anything saying that they're not going to take effect then, but like I said, we all know that we're living in a kind of an odd time here. So here you can type in any address. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in two of our examples that we are going to be looking at. There we are, we're Drive. Okay, so this is what their maps look like, and if you click on the house, yes, I'm trying to click on the building there we go. So this one is showing that this is flood X. There is not a flood zone. You should not need to maintain flood insurance. So this is a great thing to see. So if you're on here and your people are asking you want something quick, this should be. This is what the insurance agents are looking at. And it kind of goes on here, but you'll notice down here on the insurance, I'm going to type one that is in a flood zone and it's giving you the same numbers. So definitely, this is where you need to start. Yep.
You said that this one, where are you looking at when it says this is not?
Flood hazard right down here where it says hazard. It says zone X, minimal flood risk. And it's green. I mean, I will show you the next one we go to. As soon as I type the address in, it turns red. It'll say hi and red.
Okay, when I saw the red on the building, I was thinking, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah. No, that's just the dot to click on.
Gotcha.
Yep. So yeah, so here, but I will show you when we're in GIS that this was in a flood zone up until the preliminary ones are taking over. So, there are some things there. Okay. No. Goodness.
Hey, Amy, question
Yep.
also real quick. I tried that, the www.reference.com, and it didn't work. Where did you get the helpful links to start with? I'm sorry.
That's all I typed in when I just did it.
You just regular, type it in directly?
Yep. I don't know, there may have been a space or something while you were typing, but don't worry, it did work because I just did it just now, but yeah, I don't know why that would be. We'll try it again in just a second. But so this one is in a flood zone. So if you type on it, you'll start seeing the hazards and mitigations and all of that kind of stuff. So it will show you all of that. Like I said, this is not primarily the site that I wanted to go over. I just wanted to show you that this is what the insurance agents are looking at. So if they come back saying that you're in a flood zone or whatever, this is what they're looking at. Okay. And that is on the sheet when you guys get the handout. It's under all the stuff. I'll go over how to pull the GIS maps, and then it's a highlighted section that just gives you this website. And if you just type in NC floods, NC flood maps.com, it'll take you right here. Okay, and then you can bookmark that. And you can see that the actual website is called flood.nc.gov. So either one would be fine typing that in, but NC flood maps is easy to remember. So let me real quick try so if you just reference.com. And there it is. So I don't know, there might have just been something with the way you were typing it, or it may have been down for a second, but it should pop up. And I have tried this both on Mac and on on PC, and both of them work on there. So just keep trying that, but it's a great site. Okay.
Amy, I have a quick question. I'm
Yep.
sorry. So I'm getting ready to list a house at 322 Sugarberry Court. and I pulled it up and there's no buildings there. The road is there, but there's no houses at all on that road. Have you seen that happen?
On that NC flood maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what just happened with that 201 Penster. It didn't show those. I mean, they were new construction 7 years ago, but it
Right.
may just be some sort of overlay on there. Like I said, I'm not an expert on that site yet, but
Okay.
it should be fine. I just clicked anywhere around there and it still pulled up that detail.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So for the next however long it takes to get through most of these, this is the site. This is where you're going to be doing most everything. It's great that they put this all in one place. So it is onslowcountync.gov. It's on the sheet. Don't worry about, writing everything down. I promise you, you'll get the step-by-step sheet. But this is where you're going to be doing pretty much everything. Bookmark this page. So between these two things, so if you look over here on the left, we've got GIS maps and we've got e-services. Those are the two icons that we're going to be clicking on and going back and forth on, and 99% of the public records that you need can be found on either one of these two things, GIS maps or e-services, both here on the left. Okay, so the first one we're going to start with is I'm going to click on GIS maps, and it's going to take me to the GIS website. Now, we are going to have Onslow County teach a class. They teach a great class on GIS, and they go over things that I'm not going to go over today because it doesn't really have to do with public records. But if you're doing mail outs and all kinds of stuff, man, you can get the addresses straight from GIS. So if you don't, we can do this, you can do it through Flex and Realist and some other things a couple different ways, but GIS can pull all that stuff too. And when Onslow County teaches that class, they go over all that stuff and it is fantastic. So, but what we are going to concentrate on first are the flood maps. So I'm going to do the same addresses I did before. So when you're typing in, you go up here to the active search layer and you start typing in addresses. You can also type in names. Like if you knew, here, I'll show you. So since my name is, there's not a whole lot of DeMarses. If you just type in a name, you'll see. So now you all know where I live. Look, here it is. So you can do it by name. You could do it by builder if you know what their development name is in here. You can do it a whole lot of different ways, but we're going to concentrate on addresses because we usually know what the address is. So the first one is 628 Southampton. Now on here, you do need to have more information than you do on some sites. You probably could find it without the South, but put in as much information as you can and then hit go, but you don't need Court Drive, you don't need city or anything like that. So just put in the address and the house pops up. So this is the first indication of anything that's important. If you're in GIS and you pull something up and it is on pink, that means it is inside city limits. So now you have city taxes to consider. So again, I'm looking through the names and I see a couple names I don't recognize. So if you are new at all or just didn't know this for some reason, it does cost more tax-wise to live inside city limits than it does to live just in the strict county. In Jacksonville city limits, it's almost double the taxes, which still our tax rate, if you've ever lived anywhere else in the country, is a lot lower than most places. So it's still not prohibitive. But again, if your person is looking at a house right here and a house, this is a creek, so this is not the end of Jacksonville, but just say it was, but they're looking at a house over here, this house is going to be cheaper. So again, if they're at the top of their budget, this house may be better than this house for them. And you'd want to start talking to the lender about that. So again, if you see anything come up in pink, you are now inside some sort of city or town limits that have different taxes than the county. Okay. So the first thing that we want to look at when we're doing flood maps, GIS can do a lot of things. And we're going to go along what all these banners kind of mean and everything. But right now we're talking about flood. So I'm going to go up here to the top banner and click on map layers. There's a lot of things you can do here. One of the required fields in Flex is for you to put dimensions in. This is where I find it the easiest to find these. If you click on this button that says dimensions, it will populate. I know this is a little small, but we can blow it up and you can see what these dimensions are. So when Flex is asking you to type those in, you start up here and then just go around in order. So you type in 27.78 by 260.10 by 94.20, and you just keep going around. I will say, just talking to people at regional and everything, if there are more than 5 of these dimensions, you're within your rights to just type IRR or irregular. You don't have to type in a quadradecahedron amount of numbers to put into. If it is truly an irregular shaped lot, they are fine with you writing irregular. But if you do know the dimensions and it will fit in that line, I would say to go ahead and put it. More information, the better. Okay, that's not really anything that we're doing anything on. That was just a little tip and trick for you on that. But do play around in here. When you're in here, there's tons of stuff that GIS can tell you. We're not going to click on everything in here, but just know that there's tons of stuff. If you're ever looking for anything and you need to know what fire district it's in or what zip code it's in or whatever, there's tons of stuff on here. The first thing that I tell people to check when we are doing these map layers in GIS is this wetlands NCDENR approximation. I will talk to you a little bit about wetlands. When Flex is asking you to identify wetlands, and when I think it's important for you to discuss wetlands, it's not these necessarily, but this is an excellent indication that there might be 404 wetlands. So we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to plat maps, but if you have wetlands on a lot, the 404 wetlands, that is Army Corps of Engineers, federally protected, you cannot disturb that undergrowth. You cannot chop down all the trees, or your clients can't. You can blaze a trail back there, but you can't do a lot of things. You can't change how the water would run in and out of there. So it does become important, because if your client has said, I want to clear this entire 2 acres, and then you find that there are 404 wetlands that go all the way up here, they can't clear this portion. They will get fined by the federal government. So these are all important things. Why I tell people to click this box is, if you see this bright green come up, you'll usually see it say swamplands or riverine swamp or something like that. Doesn't necessarily mean that this is 404 wetlands in here, but it really is a good indication. And the problem with plat maps is that if the plat map was made before, like 1995 or maybe even later, they don't show the 404 wetlands all the time. So this is just a good indication that your people may, if they have told you that they want to clear all of their land and you don't see wetlands on a plat map, this is one more reason why they should be getting a survey. You should, I will say that I think you should always encourage your people to get a survey no matter what. It matters for a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today, but wetlands are one. Please do be aware that if you have your people order a survey, they need to ask the surveyor in writing to also mark out wetlands. If they do not ask them for that, the surveyor does not automatically mark wetlands. But that is one of the things that I would want to know on a survey. So like I said, this is not the be all and end all. Just because you see this green on here doesn't mean that they can't cut down these trees. Like I said, again, it's just an indication, but I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that because I want to talk about flood. So right now, and up until June 19th, possibly later, you're going to see all 3 of these things. You're going to see floodway preliminary, flood zones preliminary, and flood zones effective. Right now, I want you to click all 3 of those because you need to know where the effective zones are. That means what they need flood insurance for right now, today. And you need to know what the preliminary ones are, because that is probably what's going to be accepted. Now, this is inside City of Jacksonville, so those preliminary maps are not set in stone yet, but you'd still want to know. So if you click on the effective ones, you can see that this lot has this little itty bitty piece of flood AE. So if you were listing this house, me as a broker in charge would tell you that you need to disclose that in the MLS that there is flood AE on this lot. Now you better believe that I will also be saying that I will be uploading this map and saying it's nowhere near the house. Your people do not, this house does not require flood insurance. When somebody is going to, an insurance agent is going to require flood insurance if the house was here. The house has to be touching the flood zone for them to require flood insurance. Still probably not a bad idea. I mean, if you saw this much flood, and let's go out a little ways. So this is Northeast Creek Park where we are right now too. So if you were to see this and see that much flood everywhere, if I were to buy this house, I might consider getting flood insurance because that's a lot of flood zones. Now, if you actually see this house in person, you would see, I'm sorry, I'm probably making everybody sick. You would see that the house is all the way up here and then there's a huge downslope. So would the water ever really rise up there? I don't know. That's for individuals, but just so you know that, I would still put it in flex that you do have flood AE here, but I would say that, it's well outside the range of the house and you should not be required to have flood insurance. So now we're going to come back up here and we're going to click on the preliminary ones. Give it a second to catch up. Okay, well, this one wiped it out. So this is one of them. This is one of the things that Onslow County must have been fighting, because up until about last month, the flood zone came. Oh, there it goes. Sorry. We just had a lag. Okay, so here's where the preliminary maps become important. As of today, these people only had this flood on their lot. Probably don't need flood insurance. But now, when these preliminary maps take effect, now that's not exactly where the house is. We'll turn on the aerial maps and you can see where the house is. And that's actually one of the next steps. So if you go all the way down to the bottom, you can click on aerials and you may as well use the most recent one for what we're doing. I'm gonna, let me uncheck this city layer. You can take that pink off and it makes it a little bit easier to see. Oh my gosh, super slow. All right, well, as we're waiting for that, we can kind of see, but this is the outline of the house. It's now in a flood zone. Okay, now this is a 0.2% chance flood zone. It's not a high risk flood zone, but it still is in a flood zone. And these people are now going to probably by every insurance company, if this house were to sell, these people are going to need flood insurance. So now these people need flood insurance and they're in the city of Jacksonville. So if this house was at the top of their budget already, they are probably now well outside of their budget just with those two things. So this is why it's important. Okay, so that's one example. The other one that we looked up on NC Floods is 201 Penster. This is in Maidstone in Richlands. Okay, lots and lots of flood. If you were to be looking at a house and you saw this map come up, your people may want to be concerned. You can see on the other side of the road, they'd be fine. But over here, they have, their house itself is in mostly a fairly low flood risk area. But you get all the way back here, and this is about as bad as it gets when you start seeing red, other than, actual Cobra zones by the beach and everything. Now, this particular house, I happen to know because we built this house. And this builder brought in 50 tons or more of fill dirt and actually raised the house above the flood plain. We do have Loma maps that we ordered that would show. So if these people were to go and sell this house again, they actually don't have flood insurance required for their house, but these people do, because this particular builder took the house out of the flood zone, but this one didn't. So there's that. What I wanted to show you on this one, though, is this. Maidstone is in the town limits of Richlands. So that would be the first thing that you saw. So if you had not gotten to the flood dimensions yet and you just pulled up this address, all of a sudden you're seeing pink. I didn't know when I first started real estate that there was city limits in Richlands and that they have different taxes than the county does right over here. So if we go, oops, I'm sorry. If we go out a little ways, you're real close to not being in city limits. But Maidstone, it's, oh my gosh, sorry about all this lag, guys. But Maidstone is on a border. So this is not city limits of Richlands. These people wouldn't pay city taxes. These people wouldn't pay city taxes, but these people pay city taxes. It's not the same city taxes as Jacksonville. It is a little bit less, but again, that could knock your people out between being in city limits in Richlands and having all those flood zones. That may knock your people out of qualifying for this house. That's something that you would want to know up front. Okay. All right, and let's take a look at one more, mostly for the same reason. So this one's in Holly Ridge. Again, town limits of Holly Ridge. So again, just be aware that when you're looking at city limits and those taxes and everything, it's not just Jacksonville. You do have to know that there are other cities out there and everything. So please do, you know, be aware of that. All right, and the last one that I want to show you, I just touched briefly on those red zones that you saw. If you don't do a whole lot of work at the beach, you may never see anything like these. But if you do work at the beach, this is really important. So again, we're in North Topsail Beach. You saw the pink, which meant that you were in city limits. Now you're seeing this cross hatching. This is VE. These are COBRA zones. If you need to get insurance in these zones, you are going to be paying big, big money if the house touches those zones. So just do really be aware that there are a bunch of different levels of flood zones and all of that kind of stuff. And if you're going to start selling at the beach, you really need to get versed on COBRA and what that means, and you know, how your people could even qualify for insurance. If it gets bad enough, Lloyd's of London is the only person that will insure them at some point, and it's like $10,000, you know. So I mean, it's a lot when you get into some of this. So just do be aware that that is all of those. We pulled up the aerial maps before, but I want to show you real quick why the aerial maps can be important. So this one, okay, you see these little X's popping up here? So that means flood X. I'm going to turn this off for just a second. So this is not in a flood zone. It's not in the city. Everything's lagging, sorry. But I'm going to take all of these off because none of that's super important for this one. All right. So why I'm showing you this one is, now these boundary lines are not exact. So if you see a fence going slightly over one of these GIS lines, I wouldn't be overly alarmed. But again, there's always a reason for your people to get surveys. This is a really good reason. But this house, if you see right here, there's a fence line that's way over that line. This is the house we're looking at. This is their fence. That's a big problem. So if I had a buyer who was looking at this house, they need to get a survey, because if this person is encroaching that far onto theirs, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. They need to know that, because those fences need to get moved. The bigger problem is that the house goes over this line. So what's even happening here? you know, do we need, you can't really move the house, but what does that mean for their title policies? What does it mean for anything else? And with one click of a button, with just clicking on that aerial, you can now see that you might have a problem. And again, if your people need to close in 2 weeks and they don't have, you know, tons of money that they want to be moving fences with and everything else, this may not be the house for them. So again, these are all the reasons why we pull these things before we write offers. This is where you can start doing your due diligence and your buyer's due diligence way up front. Okay. So that is pretty much it on the actual flood maps. Does anybody have any questions on just flood? Okay. So now I'm going to show you what else you can get to straight from here. So I told you that the Onslow County NC.gov website is, excuse me, fantastic. One of the nicest parts about it is that when you type in here into GIS, you get a whole lot of other things. So we just did map layers, but what you also get is everything that's in here. So if you're ever wondering how to fill out a contract, when they're asking you for the legal description, they're asking you for lot numbers, they're asking you for deed book and pages, all of that is on this screen. So on here, this is the PIN number they ask you for on an offer to purchase. This is the owner's correct name. So if the MLS says something different than this, you need to start asking that listing agent why. In something like this or in new construction, sometimes it's still in the developer's name and it's going to be transferred to the builder's name, but that's still a question that you should ask. Here's the physical address. Here's the legal description. So lot numbers, section numbers, subdivision name. This is your deed book and page. This is the last time it sold. That's how much it sold for. So knows what's happening there. Here's your plat book and page. Here's your tax value if your people are asking you how much tax they're going to pay. Here's the year it was built. Here is the county heated square footage, which we will go over. We know that that's not usually all that accurate. And here's who owns the house and where they live. Okay, so if we come back here, like I said, all of those will give you, and usually the acreage is on there too. Did I skip that? There we go. Sorry, it was exactly one. So, and there's the legal acreage and everything. So all of those things are on different forms, but if you are trying to fill out an offer to purchase and that information's not in Flex or it's not correct in Flex, this is the correct information. Okay. So what you can do
to that section?
So if you just come up here and you type in any address and hit go or enter, it all comes up down here. Okay, so you don't have to do anything. This is the automatic screen that comes up on GIS that'll show you all of that. And you can get rid of it.
Sorry.
Okay?
If you guys are finding where there's maybe a discrepancy between something that that Realist populates for you in the MLS versus what you find in the GIS, reach out to us, reach out to the MLS, because sometimes there is a lag time between the two systems, and sometimes the data just comes over and it doesn't go in the way it's supposed to. So we just have to submit that information to Realist. So either us or the regional MLS will be able to get that taken care of for you. So if you find any discrepancies, we can get that ironed out for you.
Okay, that's great. All right, so yeah, so this is just the default screen. This is what comes up if you type in an address up here. So the next record that we want to pull, so we pulled the flood maps and all of that kind of stuff, and you can print any screen from here. So if we had this flood pulled up and you wanted to print it, you just come up here to the print button, hit print. It'll ask you if you want it portrait or landscape or whatever, all your printing stuff, if you wanted a PDF, if you want it to put any layers on there, and then you just hit print and it'll print you a nice little PDF. That's all on that sheet as well. But the next thing that we're going to do is basically I'm just going to go along and go kind of left to right on some of the other things that you can pull.
Hey,
the joiners
Amy?
just mean like, yep.
Sorry, we had one question about how you got from just the dot of the house to the actual view of the house.
Oh, okay, and that's in, so map layers that we were on when we were talking about, so we were down here in flood. And those are some of your layers. The last layer is aerial. So I just turned the aerial view on. Okay, so if I unclick that, it'll go back to just the little dot of the house. And there are, you know, sometimes I want to see this because it's more clear where the, you know, where the lines are or whatever. And sometimes I want to see the aerial. I do ask my agents to do both, or to at least put the aerial view in there at some point. Now, again, we do a lot of new construction and all it is trees. So the aerial view is not super helpful on that, but I do want to see those boundary lines and I want to see if there's fences and all of that kind of stuff. So let me take this one away. And this one actually looks pretty good, but like these people's fence, you know, they could have come over a little bit more, but thank you for keeping a little bit of a buffer and all that. But so yeah, so that's just the aerial view. And they have aerial views from a long time ago too. So if you needed to see when a fence went up or whatever, you could, you know, unclick that and click that one and see if there was a change. Oh, the house was not built, it disappeared. And they used to have a pool. But so you can kind of go through those if you ever needed to research back a little bit. But in general, for our intents and purposes, I'm going to look at the most recent one.
Amy, is 2018 the date that all of the aerial pictures were taken?
Yes, and that is the most recent time that we got a big download of all of the information. I would assume that we might be getting another one this year. Now that this system is a little bit easier for them to update. You know, we get better with technology all the time. And so I would think we would probably be getting new aerial views sometime this year or next year as well. But this will give you a lot of information, if not everything.
And then one more question. Somebody was looking at a map near Sailor's Lane, and have you ever seen a yellow stop sign emblem with a black dot, and what does that mean?
I mean, it should be in here somewhere. There it is. It's a single wide.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, and yeah, and there's a lot of these. If you know, click and unclick a lot of these, you'll see all those legends, hog farms and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, you can usually figure that out if you just kind of start clicking and unclicking a bunch of these things. All right. So we're going to go back here. So adjoiners, I do actually use that sometimes, again, for new construction. Like, let's say this house wasn't here, but this one was. If this house hasn't had a new deed recorded yet, sometimes it will not pull up in this box. So if I typed in 114 Waverly, it will say no map found. But I could type in 112 Waverly and then hit the find adjoiners, and it would show me the houses that are around it. So sometimes that's a little bit helpful, but that's usually about the only time that I use that. The one that I want to go over next though is plat maps. So I am a plat map girl. I think that these are incredibly important. So if you just click on view plat maps, it's going to take us to the Register of Deeds page. You can look up plat maps just from the deed page, and I do show you how to do that in the sheet as well. But the nice part about these sites talking to each other is you're already on this house and you're trying to find out all the information you can on the house, and this is a great way to do it. Are you guys seeing the Register of Deeds page with a yellow line?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it's actually pulling all of those. Okay. So once you're in here, it'll come up, it'll tell you that this is a map. It'll tell you what the book and page number is. That should match all of that. What you want to do is click on the image, and this will pull up. And we're thinking. There we go. And there it is. And there is tons and tons in plat maps. So if you are reading any of these, you'll see who the surveyor was, you'll see when it was recorded, you'll see the houses, which is really what we're looking at. You'll see, you know, how many lots are in this section of the subdivision, what are their setbacks. This property not located in a flood hazard zone. No wetlands or other areas of environmental concern are located. So if I was looking at this map and I didn't see anything that showed little chicken feet, because that's usually what wetlands look like on here, I may think, ooh, I wonder if they even looked for wetlands on here. Because like I said, if you ask a surveyor to do a survey, they don't necessarily put the wetlands on your particular survey if you don't ask them to. Well, they also didn't do that before a certain date. So if I was looking at this and I thought that this subdivision was before the year 2000, I may be worried that I'm just not seeing wetlands because the surveyor didn't put them on here. This little thing right here on the right that says no wetlands or other areas of environmental concern means that they did look for wetlands and they still didn't find any. So that's great. Okay. What you want to look at a lot of times is these words, final plat, because you do get preliminary plats on some new construction, and that means that they may not have looked for those wetlands yet or anything else too. So you do want to look for those words, final plat. Okay, and then you can see, and it says revised, and usually somewhere on here it'll tell you why it was revised. They changed a couple street names, all of that kind of stuff. So if you want to print this out, you just go to print, all pages. It'll print you a nice little PDF of that as well. This plat map's not too interesting. What I want to show you next, though, that one popped right up when we were on it. So we're going to go to a new house. So this is 401 Zircon. This is in Sterling Farms. Okay, so if I click view plat here, it gives me an error message. A lot of times when you get this error message, what the error is are these two zeros right here, those two leading zeros for 007. Though, so what it says on here when you're looking at the plat map is that the plat book and page is 58007. This site is not communicating correctly with this site. It doesn't like these double zeros. So all you need to do is come up here, and again, this is all on the sheet. Don't worry about taking notes. If you click on book page and type in those numbers, 58, and then the page is 7, not 007, it's just 7. Then if you click search, that map will come right up. So anytime you get an error message, 95% of the time, it's just some sort of leading zero or something on there, and you just need to take those zeros out. So don't, you know, panic that there's no plat map or anything yet. That's usually what it is. So again, we're going to click on images. Now, Sterling Farms has a lot more information on their plat maps, and we're going to go over a few things on here. Here's my rotate. I'll go that way. Okay. Again, you've got the surveyor's information. They corrected the spelling of turquoise. Okay. As we go down here, you get some other things. You get the ownership and dedication. You get that it's going to be put on sewer. Okay. This is a big one. We talked about this earlier. All streets here on are intended for private use. Okay. Now this part is good though. The repair and maintenance of the streets are the responsibility of the homeowners association. So there are lenders that are okay with this statement because homeowners association dues are being collected and those roads are being maintained. But again, if your person is with Navy Fed and you see this at the beginning of the transaction, I would be calling the lender at Navy Fed, sending this to them, reading this out to them, and asking them to put in writing, are you or are you not okay with this statement? Can you loan money on this house? So you know right up front, because if they say no or they won't put it in writing, you need to probably start shopping around for a different lender that is okay with private roads that are maintained by the HOA. Do be aware that there are private roads that are not maintained by an HOA, and you're going to have to jump through some more hoops. But it would be better to know that at the beginning of a 30 to 45 day closing than it is the day before closing. Okay, so that's one of the other things on plat maps that you're always looking for is this. And so, and when Navy Fed does ask you for road maintenance agreements or anything else, if there is not a recorded road maintenance agreement, like an actual document saying, I, John Doe, maintain these streets, this blurb is what I send them over and over again. Usually I have to send it 3 times, and then on the 3rd time they finally say, okay, we'll accept that. But it is on the plat map. The plat map is a recorded document. It has a book and page number. It has the stamps of being, that's not the stamp of recording, but it is a recorded document. This is a recorded document. This is a road maintenance agreement of some sort. Now this one's also, I happen to know that in Sterling Farms, it's actually in the restrictive covenants as well. That's even better because it's written in words, and that's what Navy Fed likes. And again, right here, wetlands are as shown. So they did look at wetlands on here. So what I want to show you on that, on wetlands on the plat map, is what those look like. So again, here we are. This is wetlands. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. They look like chicken feet. Okay. Again, 95% of the surveyors who mark wetlands mark it like this, and it looks like the chicken feet. Very easy to see. There is one surveyor who makes them look like a 9-year-old girl's clouds, like they, you know, those big puffy clouds. That's what they do. I don't know why. But just look for it, and it'll always be also spelled out that this is wetlands. Okay. So I'm going to go back down to normal size. We're going to rotate so it's easier to see. So there's wetlands up here. So if this was the lot we were looking at, there's wetlands that touch that lot. That needs to be disclosed on the MLS. It needs to be disclosed to your buyers. It needs to be disclosed to your sellers. If you happen to be the one listing the house, you know, you just need to let them know, hey, did you know there are wetlands on here? You know, just let everybody know. It's all material fact on there. So I want to go to the 3rd page of this one. Oh, actually, no, I didn't want to do that. Yeah. So when wetlands becomes important, I'm probably going to go back. So let's say, so this is not an actual lot. There's no lot number on it. But let's say that your client was trying to decide between this house and this house. Okay, this one still does have a little bit of wetlands on the corner. But again, if they had said the words, I want to put in a pool, I want to have no trees, I want a giant play yard, I want anything, and they were looking between these two, you probably need to suggest that they choose this lot. Okay, it may be just, you know, a little bit smaller, it may be whatever, but if this is where the house sits, they can't touch these trees. These are federally protected trees. They can't do anything with that. So if your person wanted a lot of privacy, that may be a great lot for them. But if they want a pool, if they want a cleared backyard, this is not the lot for them. They cannot clear those trees. I've seen the fines go up as high as like $40,000 for taking down trees in federally protected wetlands. Real briefly, let's talk about wetlands, what wetlands are. It's an ugly word. So people kind of get a little, they're like, oh, I don't want that on my lot. Wetlands are a good thing. What it means is that it's actually, a lot of times it's holding back floodwaters, so your house may not get that floods. But what it is it's a conservation area. They're trying to keep the trees where they are and the undergrowth where it is, because that land is being impacted somehow. And if you were to clear cut that, you're ruining the topography and you're ruining the ecological features of that area. They need those wetlands there, but it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean it's a swamp. It doesn't mean anything like that. I've got wetlands in my backyard and they are never any wetter than the rest of the grass. It doesn't mean that it's a swamp. It just means that it is there to protect, to make it more ecologically sound for something. And there's many and varied reasons for that. But the Army Corps of Engineers are the one that designate these as wetlands. If you ever have any questions, you actually can ask the Army Corps of Engineers about that. So that's that one. And that's pretty much it on this plat map that I want to talk about, but I want to go back and show you one other thing. Oh, there's actually a couple of them. So, oh my goodness, typing too fast. Okay, so again, we're getting this error message. So we just come up here, type in 7365, go. Okay. On this one, okay, so what we're looking for is this word right here, final plat. And it didn't pull up, usually it pulls up one back because they didn't have these retention ponds and the wetlands in the first one. So when we had the preliminary map on this, it didn't show everything that we needed. So we wouldn't have wanted to use that preliminary map because when we went to go sell 303 C Hunter Way, these people wouldn't have known that they had wetlands on there. So again, just make sure that you're looking for words like that, like final plat. Oh my goodness. No. Okay, so this one, when this plat pulls up, we were saying on the last one that that final plat was important. So when we come down here, what we're seeing is that this is a final plat, Riverside Plantation, and it's a recombination of these lots. So it's a recombination of 43, 44, 45, and 46, okay? And that's what it's showing. That's great, all right? So, but when you see words like recombination and they give you a reason or whatever for why they may have wanted to recombine these, you may want to just go back a little bit. So what it says on here, where is it? So then if you look down here on the reference, so anytime you have a recombination, it's usually going to give you a reference. It's going to give you a reason why they were recombined. But it is telling us something about map book 26, page 167. Okay, so we're going to want to look that up. So we're going to go back. We're going to look at book page 26, 167, and just see if there was any more information on the original plat. So again, that was lots 43, 44, 45, and 46 that we were looking at. So when they come up on the original plat map that shows the entire neighborhood, we come down here and we're looking at 43, 44, 45, and 46, and we see this line. If we go back to where they have it marked, where's the markings? Okay, maybe we have to look at the legend. Okay, sorry, I can't see where it is, but these are wetlands. Okay, those lines there, if I could find where it said on the legend what those are. So on the recombination one that we were looking at, they didn't mark the wetlands, but on the original plat map, they did. Okay, so just do be aware that if you see things that are referenced check out that reference, go the extra step that, you know, took all of 30 seconds to just type in those other numbers and just see if there was something that got missed on the recombination that just wasn't important to them. Okay. The last one I want to show you on plat maps is why I was telling you at the beginning. So if we came in here to map layers, I am going to, okay, I'm going to leave that on there. All right. So I told you at the very beginning that I like to check this box when I'm checking the map layers. So this is the wetlands NC/DENR approximation, and we see this depressional swamp forest that comes across here, okay? So if I had that in the back of my head and I went here, once again, we have some sort of weird, that's not even a leading zero, but maybe it doesn't like the zero at the end. So we're gonna go to book page 22, 160, and we get this plat map, okay? All right, and I forgot what, okay, lot 35. All right, so this is the lot, okay? Great, looks good, plat map looks clean. This is an easement. And they'll note that down here, and they'll tell you what the easement's for and everything. And I'm looking. Okay, everything looks good. Now, wetlands, my people have told me that they want to clear cut that whole thing because they need every square inch for some sort of apple orchard or something that they want to do in the backyard. So I'm looking and I'm looking and I'm like, okay, well, it doesn't really say anything about wetlands on here, but it's a final plat. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's okay. They could probably do that. And then I just happened to catch down here that this one was 1984. Okay, so it's pre-2010. I wonder if wetlands were not marked on there. So I go back to GIS and I look at that and I see that this entire neighborhood has a big swath of depressional swamp forest. And I see that none of these neighbors have ever cut down any of their trees. At this point, I would think that this is probably 404 wetlands and that it was not marked on this plat map because it was done before they really started marking wetlands on the plat map. So if my people had said the words, it's important to me that I don't have any trees in my backyard, they need to get a survey and they need to get it quickly, because in seeing enough of these maps, I could almost guarantee that that is 404 wetlands. And sure enough, this was a buyer that we had a while ago. This is 404 wetlands. They cannot cut down the trees from about here back. Okay. So again, it's listening to what your people have to say and then just knowing enough about the public records to just know that that might be a problem. And again, if you'd pulled this map and you'd seen that like these people had cut all their trees back and these people had cut all their trees back, maybe I wouldn't be quite as concerned. But like I said, not one of any of these people had. That's a concern. Okay, so that's where this little click right here becomes a really good indication. All right, does anybody have any questions on plat maps?
Yes, ma'am. Hi, how are you? I was wondering about the managed pine when it's gray, when you have under the wetland layer.
So most of these don't mean a whole lot to individual buyers. Okay, if you're in a subdivision and it says managed pine or pine flat or anything like that, it doesn't mean necessarily that they can't cut those trees down. If they are concerned about anything in there, they need to call the county and ask them what that representation means, what they can do with it and everything. But if they're already in a neighborhood, it's usually fine. It's not managed to the point that they can cut them down. Sorry,
Can I give
missed
you an
that.
address? Would you?
Sure.
Okay, 211 Old Field School Lane.
Old what? Fieldstone?
No, Old Field School. Old Field School Lane.
Ooh.
I know, it's tongue twister.
Yeah. So, I mean, anytime you see something like that, usually those pine lands are fine. There's nothing that they need to worry about. If they do have specific questions, they can call the county zoning and just ask them those questions. They could send them the map if they really needed to, but if they just say, hey, I've got a block of managed pineland on my lot, what does that mean to me as an individual? In general, the county's probably going to tell them nothing. And like you said, I mean, you know, usually when it's a natural occurrence of anything, it's going to be some sort of flowy pattern. When you get blocks like this is just the government telling you that we need to have certain areas. Okay. So like I said, if it's a concern to them at all, just, you know, they can always call the county, they can do stuff like that, but managed pineland usually isn't a worry. The ones, like I said, the one that I usually see is when it is the depressional swamp forest. That's usually the good indication that there's 404 wetlands. The rest of these are kind of, for us, for our intents, not super important. Now, if they were a land
Okay, that's
developer or something like that, this may make a bigger difference to somebody buying 100 acres of land and wanting to do something on it.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, this is my house, so I just I was curious because we just bought it, and so
Yeah, that should be,
I
you should be fine on that one.
because there are trees back there, so it looks like wetlands, you know, and they have like the the barrier up for the growth barrier, and
Yeah.
but okay, cool, awesome,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
it's usually good. And like I said, if you could have a surveyor go out there
Yeah, and
and
mark
they
it.
could tell you all of that too. So,
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
sure. Okay, so we're going to move right along to the next thing along the bottom. So now, you know, we're in here. We talked a little bit about adjoiners. We talked about plats. Now we're going to go to deeds. So if you'll remember from pre-licensing, post-licensing, everything else, you know, deeds can be very important. I'm going to just do this so we can see all of it at once rather than having to click through pages. Deeds are important. So if you were on here and none of these people I think have sold since, okay, it's not a good example anymore. But anyway, so as we go over the deeds, what's important to look for? I know a lot of times you're looking at legal documents and you're like, man, that's just a bunch of gobbledygook. I really don't care. There's a ton that you can learn from deed books. So the first thing you're looking for is this name right here. Zachary T. Odell should be the one who the listing agent has put in Flex. He should be the one that's on the residential property disclosure, mineral disclosure, and all of that kind of stuff. So if this name, the grantee name, is different than what is being provided by the listing agent, you need to call that listing agent and ask them why. Okay, and this does say sole and separate. They were separated. She did a quit claim deed, and this is his house. She does not have, Christiana Lombardi does not have to sign. Okay, I would still be asking for a quit claim deed, free trader, or whatever, just to kind of round those up. But you know, that is good. Okay, yeah, legal gobbledygook, all of that kind of stuff. Then you're looking and you're making sure that those are correct. It's telling you right here what the plat book and page is, which is great. That's good information to know. And that's pretty much it for this. As you get down here, easements, covenants, restrictions, right-of-ways for the current year, but it's not giving you any specifics. So, you know, here's where he acquired the deed. So if you needed to do like a little mini title search, you could track back that way. There's the plat book again. This is important though. On the newer deeds, if you get to this final page and it has the tax certification form, if this top box is not checked, they might have some delinquent taxes. So again, if you've got people that are buying in our MLS in general, you know, the attorney's going to catch stuff like that. But if you're buying on the courthouse steps and some of these deferred taxes or, you know, delinquent taxes boxes are checked, if you buy that house, you are going to have to pay those taxes to get the house. So like I said, just make sure that top one is checked. If it's not for some reason, I'd start calling around to listing agents, to attorneys, whatever, and just see what you have to do to get rid of that. Okay. So like I said, there's just lots of stuff that you're looking for on, why won't you go away? Oh my gosh. Okay. That is not one of the deeds I wanted to look for.
Amy, we did have a quick question about wetlands real quick that I missed. I'm sorry. So if someone cuts down wetlands on their lot without a permit, etc., and sold the property now, and someone notices it now, is it too late to report it?
I mean, if it's been done and you don't, you know, those people weren't fined or whatever, I mean, it's probably okay. If you're really concerned about it, you can call the Army Corps of Engineers. But if you really want to buy that house and you're about to get those sellers slammed with a, you know, $20,000 fine, they're probably not going to want to sell the house to you anymore. They may not be able to, but I don't know. I mean, I'm that's beyond my level of expertise on legal reasons why you need to do certain things. But I would still, I'd probably talk to the closing attorney and just see what kind of liability under the title policy and everything your buyers would have in that case. And they may take it out of your hands. But that would be my suggestion, is just talk to the closing attorney and see how that's going to make a difference to title. Oh, whoops. What in the world? Ugh. Ticket. Oh, okay. Well, this one went into default, so we're not going to look at that one either. I haven't checked my notes for a while on the ones that I'm pulling. Basically, the ones that I was trying to pull, the first one had the wife's name misspelled on the actual deed. Probably not a huge issue, but again, you'd want to let the closing attorney know that as soon as possible, just in case they need to go back a step and do anything to correct that before your buyers can buy the house. The bigger one is going to be, let's pull this one. So let's say that in the MLS, you had the listing agent had just written, you know, McCarty. Well, great, that is his name, that's great. But then the residential property disclosure and the mineral oil and gas rights only had Tom on there. Well, if you pull the deed and you see that he's married, Regina also needs to be signing all of those forms and the offer and everything else. So if at that point, if you were to call the listing agent and say, hey, do you have a quitclaim deed, free trader, whatever, is Tom divorced from Regina? Is there a reason why you don't have her on the documents? And they say, well, yeah, they're divorced, but we don't have any of that. They need to get on that, because you're going to have some sort of free trader agreement or quitclaim deed saying that Tom can sell this house as a sole person without Regina. If he cannot get that, you have to convince Regina to sign everything. What's even more is if the person now tells you, oh no, Tom and Regina divorced last year, he remarried Mary. Well, if you can't get them to agree to the free trader or quitclaim deed, now Tom, Regina, and Mary all have to sign every one of those documents. And trying to get an ex-wife and a new wife to do something that you want them to do may not go well for you. So just again, this is, you know, it took you 2 seconds to pull this deed and see that there was discrepancy between what's on the residential property disclosure and what's on here, you need to start asking those questions right away. If you catch that at the beginning, it's a lot easier, again, than 2 days before closing and you're trying to track down Regina, who now lives in California with a new husband or whatever. So why I pulled this one though is this clause down here. So like I said, you're reading through, and then you see this, subject to the reservation of mineral rights. Okay, this is the reason why we have that mineral oil and gas disclosure. So if they had no representation, no representation, no, checked on the mineral oil and gas rights, and then you were to see this, you know that those mineral rights had been severed at some point. That mineral oil and gas rights disclosure is not filled out correctly, which, you know, that's up to the seller on how to fill that out. But you now know that, and you know that this house does not come with its mineral rights, and that needs to be disclosed to your buyer, that you have found this, and you need to get on the phone to that listing agent to talk to the seller and figure this out. A lot of you probably know that that happened in Carolina Plantations when it was first started. Weyerhaeuser, typically, historically, they're a Texas company. They rescind all mineral rights. They keep the mineral rights for themselves every time they sell a big development. Well, here, there's really nothing for them to drill for, so there's not a whole lot of reason for them to have done that, but they still did it. So 400 and some houses in Carolina Plantations sold before someone caught on that none of those people owned the mineral rights to their house. Again, if you're in a neighborhood, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but when we're buying property in North Carolina, we are supposed to be buying the land with the mineral rights, the property, and even some of the air rights that go up there. So to have something restricted from you, to have it reserved from you is important, and you just need to know that. Whether it makes any difference or not, it needs to be disclosed to your people. The second you see something like that, subject to reservation of mineral rights, timber rights, anything like that, that is material fact that needs to be disclosed. So I would start talking to everybody to just see if that had come back. So with that, like with, what do you call it, with Carolina Plantations, at some point Weyerhaeuser went in and gave all those rights back. So when they did that, there is another deed recorded saying that everybody who owns those houses now does have the mineral rights. So again, you may see this on a deed somewhere saying that they've been reserved, and you just haven't seen the one that gave it back. But again, these are all just ways to start the conversation with people. Okay, another thing that is useful when you're pulling the deed is this is probably going to be your first indication that there are restrictive covenants. Okay, so if you're not sure that a neighborhood has restrictive covenants, and we are going to go over how to pull restrictive covenants, but this is usually the first place that you'll see it if you're pulling the deed. I would take note of that book and page, those book and page numbers. I will say that this is not gospel. Anything that's on a deed, of course, you know, somebody who's typing the deed could mistype something. Sometimes another amendment has been added since this deed was recorded and everything. So this is a good jumping off place. If this says that there are restrictive covenants, there are probably restrictive covenants. Okay. Where that becomes, and you know, I mean, any new construction, that house was obviously just built. So you'd probably think that there are restrictive covenants. But it happens in older ones too. So 134 Winter is in Raintree. Raintree is an older subdivision. This house itself was built in 1997. I mean, not super old or anything like that. But when you look at the deed, it says restrictive covenants, okay? So that, like, again, that might be your first indication. Oh, I didn't know Raintree had restrictive covenants. I need to look those up. I need to disclose that. If you are the listing agent, you need to disclose that. If you are the buyer agent, you need to uncover that and disclose as much as you can. restrictive covenants are deemed a material fact by the Real Estate Commission. You need to just be doing those little steps. Okay, that's pretty much it for what you're looking at on deeds. What I want to show you real quick that's, you know, on that same par is this next button, this View GIS Deed Card. This is the coolest little thing. If you click on this, it does a little mini title search for you. So everything that we were pulling when we were just clicking on View Deed was the most recent deed. What this button does is shows you the deeds from when it started becoming a house. So you'll have all of these things updated and everything in there, but it'll show you this was the deed we were just looking at. And then the next thing in here is going to be the deed before that. So again, if you were looking at things that had mineral rights rescinded, and you had some questions on there or anything, I'd go back a couple deeds. Okay, this one had the restrictive covenants on there as well. And this was the deed before that. So like I said, it just does this tiny little deed search for you, which is great. So if you ever have any questions, I mean, it's all right there for you. It saves you the time of writing down what the deed before that was and typing it in and all of that. So if you ever just wanted to go through and see kind of how the property had changed or what was given or taken along the way, that's just one little button that you can click that's just fantastic. So that's here in this View GIS Deed Card.
Can you show the button that you clicked on again, please?
Yep. So you're just coming along here. We did plats, we did deeds. That one is the View GIS Deed Card.
Thank you.
Yep. That is it. So the last thing I want to show you on here for we're still in GIS maps is this View Property Card. There's tons of information in here. If you're a listing agent and somebody's asking you to run a CMA and you haven't seen the house yet, this is super helpful. So you can go in here, you know, all the screens have good information on it. It'll give you the people's names. It'll give you, you know, all of that kind of stuff. It gives you the acres. If you click on sales, it'll tell you, you know, what they bought the house for. So if you kind of needed to maybe work out in your head if they owed money on this or when they bought it, all of that stuff's in there. If there's been more than one sale that this has tracked, it'll show all those sales. But when you go to residential, this is super cool. It tells you how many stories it is because they might not tell you that when they just call you, you know. It tells you what year it was built, that it has vinyl siding. Here's what the county says the heated square footage is, which if you're just running a CMA, you know, without seeing the house and being able to measure it yourself first, fine, go ahead and start there. It tells you how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. It tells you if there's a fireplace. So all these things that would really help you on your CMA. And again, these are all county records. It may not be 100% correct. They may have added a bedroom. They may have taken away a bedroom. You know, they may have knocked down a wall and whatever. But this is what the county says that this house is. It's a good place to start if you're just looking for stuff like that. If it was a commercial property, there'd be stuff under commercial. This is what I love. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is the sketch. We all know that we need to measure the houses ourselves. We cannot rely on this number in here. This said it was 2,000 some heated square feet. We cannot rely on the county tax records, but what I love is this drawing right here. If you're in here on any tax card and you go over here to printable version, over here on the right, it gives you this beautiful AutoCAD drawing of the house, and you can blow stuff up, you can do other stuff. I take this with me. I print this page out and I take this with me because what I'm going to do as I'm walking through the house and measuring it myself is I'm going to walk this wall. And if I measure 31, I'm going to cross this 32 out, write 31 here. And then if I am walking this and I get 28, I'm crossing that out and I'm writing 28. This does a couple different things. First of all, it's already drawn for me, so I don't have to draw in my chicken scratch on a piece of graph paper or a piece of paper and just have some random drawing that looks more like a circle than a square. This has a nice thing on here. But it's also going to tell me if my number varies drastically from this number, it's going to tell me why. It's going to show me how I got there, and it's going to show my seller how I got there, because if they think their house is 2,400 square feet because this is what they looked at, and you measure it and it's 2,000 square feet, they're going to be very upset with you and your numbers, but you need to show them how you got that. It'll also show you if there's additions. It'll show you if the county thought that there was a deck there, and let's say that the deck that you see is actually like 4 times the size of this. You need to ask your person if they have a permit for that, because this is all the county knows about. Okay? That's just a little tip and trick. We're not really talking about permits and stuff right now. But like I said, I love this sketch, and this is what I take with me, and this is how I do my measurements, because it can show me and everybody else where the county and I differ in what we think this house is. Okay? So super helpful. Just one little click for that. Legal descriptions are on here if you ever need anything like that. The other cool thing for CMAs or anything else is a photo. Again, tax man drove past the house and took this photo. But if you're doing a CMA, this is public domain. So if you wanted a nice pretty picture of that house, you know, just to throw on your CMA and you didn't have time to do a drive-by, you can go ahead and say, want a picture of their house. But now you also know that it's a 2-story with a 2-car garage. You know, so there can be some helpful things just going through here. All right. So does anybody have any questions on just that basic stuff? Or not basic stuff, but okay. All right. Well, let's move right along, since this is, you know, I know we're kind of some time into this, but so we're going to go back to onzocountync.gov. So this entire time we've been talking, we've been here on GIS maps. Now we're going to come down here and go to e-services. Okay, so this is the other section of this page that
Amy, we've lost you. Okay, so.
goodness, that's all.
Oh.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, there. Okay, you're back.
Is everybody still here? Sorry, my screen was going super duper slow.
Oh.
Okay, so the first place we're going to look is here in deed books, and then the search permits and plans. But we're going to start with deed books. So if you click on deed books, it's going to take you right back to the Register of Deeds website that we've already been kind of working on, but this is how you get there from scratch. Okay, so if you're looking for restrictive covenants, the easiest way to do this, and this is how attorneys do it, again, we've looked up here before at book page numbers, and you can type those in yourself. But what we're going to do is click on advanced name. As soon as you do that, if you start typing in the subdivision name and hit enter, it's going to pull up just the maps and restrictive covenants. It won't pull up deeds, deeds of trust, all of that kind of stuff. It's just going to pull up the maps and restrictive covenants. So this is super helpful when you're looking for restrictive covenants. You can come up here and sort. If you click on type, it'll put all the maps and it'll put them in order from 2013 to the most recent, and then it'll do the restrictive covenants, again, in order. So when you're pulling restrictive covenants, you're usually going to want the first section. You can see that that one is 21 pages long. So those are the original covenants for the entire neighborhood of Camden Woods. But then if your people are in section 1B, you're also going to probably want this, because that's going to be the amendment that's annexing section 1B into this. But you're going to want to look at all of them to just make sure that there's been no changes. You guys all know that, like, if there's an original section of a subdivision, it may have, you know, breed restrictions on dogs. It may have something that says that 8-foot fences are fine. But as you get further along, they may have either taken away or put new restrictions in. So you need to know what section you're in Again, when you're in GIS maps and everything, it's going to show you which section you're in, but you need to look for those specific ones. Again, the Real Estate Commission says that all of these documents here are material facts. If you're listing houses and you are not at least looking for restrictive covenants, you are not doing your duties according to the Real Estate Commission to be a reasonable and prudent agent. Just look for them. If you don't find them and you can say with a straight face to the Real Estate Commission that you looked, you may be okay, but definitely look. Okay, and if you've got buyers and the listing agent tells you there's no restrictive covenants or they don't have anything uploaded into Flex or whatever, that's not good enough to go on. You need to be running this quick little search too. Okay, so what I want to pull, oops, sorry. So we're in here. So let's look at, I can't spell today, Hidden Oaks. Okay. Again, I want to get to a specific one on here. Okay, so this is the main one for Hidden Oaks. Okay, 32 pages long. These are super fun to go through. You want to ever spend a whole lot of time doing anything. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the purpose of restrictive covenants, while we're waiting for all of this to pull up, you know, when you're in a neighborhood, people are just trying to keep everything safe. There's a lot that you can find in restrictive covenants, just like deeds or anything else. But what you're looking for in certain things are things like if your buyer has said the words, I have a Rottweiler. Well, if you know they're looking in neighborhoods, you need to be checking the restrictive covenants, and more importantly, they need to be checking the restrictive covenants. This is their due diligence time period, but you need to, as a professional, help them know where to look. If they've said the words, I own a Rottweiler, and you were to look in here and you see this saying that Rottweilers are not allowed in this neighborhood, you need to tell them that. They need to be disclosed of that. They can decide what to do with that information. If they still want to move in, there is nothing you can do about that, but your job as their professional agent is to disclose to them that Rottweilers are not allowed in this neighborhood. Okay? Just want to kind of, I'm just going to type in a couple pages because there's specific things that I want you to see on some of these. So this is the farm at Hunters Creek. And so that last one that we looked at said that there were breed restrictions and it gave specific breeds of dogs. We all know, hopefully all of us know, that there are some Jack Russell Terriers that are much more dangerous than Rottweilers. So what some attorneys have started doing is putting something like this in here, and it sounds ridiculous, but so inherently dangerous animals shall be prohibited. Following are examples of animals that shall not be deemed an exclusive listing: bats, wolves, wolf hybrids, lions, tigers, cheetahs, jaguars, cougars, leopards, snow leopards, powdered leopards, all hyenas, all bear, all apes, New World monkeys, Cape buffalo, pythons. Are you ever going to have a hippopotamus in your house, even if you got one for Christmas? Probably not. And this may look ridiculous, but what this clause right here does is says that if your inherently dangerous animal, if your Jack Russell attacks 2 children, just because it's a Jack Russell doesn't mean that this neighborhood cannot throw it out. It's not a Rottweiler, it's not a pit bull, but it is a dangerous animal, and the homeowners association can tell that homeowner to get that animal out of there. That's why they put something in here. So it may look ridiculous, but behind all of that is a loophole. So just be aware that if you see a clause like this, and this does show up a lot, that's what that means, is that if they have anything that is deemed dangerous, it can be asked to be removed from the neighborhood.
So Amy, question on that. With that being said, so what if, because you have so many people that say my Rottweiler is old and a big old baby. So if the Rottweiler is not dangerous, would they kick it out?
Nope. There's no actual breed restriction when that's in there, other than maybe a hippopotamus. But
Even if it's not a dangerous hippopotamus?
Yeah, it's at that point it is based on the behavior of the individual animal, not on the fact that it happens to be called a pit bull or a Rottweiler or anything like that.
Interesting.
So it is actually a better clause all around.
It is.
Now, if your neighbor happens to be terrified of pit bulls because they've had past bad experiences, even if your dog has done nothing to them, they may complain about it. But like I said, because of the way that that is written, you would just have to show that you've never had any problems with your dog. You know what I mean? So,
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So other than breed restrictions, certain things can become important. So this is the preserve at Tidewater. So no campers, mobile homes, all of that kind of stuff. But look at this. No bicycles, scooters, toys, or personal articles can remain on the lot or street at any time. This means that if you have children in the neighborhood and they leave their bicycle out, you could get fined by the homeowners association. They do not want bikes and scooters and toys left in the front yard. Okay? Could that be important to your clients who have young children? Yes. Are they actually going to get fined for that every time it happens? Probably not, but they could. Okay? What about this? Christmas decorations may only be exhibited between November 20th and January 7th. Your people need to know that, because if they get fined because their decorations were still up on January 8th, they should have known this. Okay? No flags, except for state of Carolina, North Carolina, and United States of America. What does that mean for somebody flying a Marine Corps flag? That means they can get fined for flying a Marine Corps flag. So again, if you know that any of these things are important to your people, you need to read through all 32 pages or whatever, this at 45 pages on this one, and just make sure, okay? The other thing the restrictive covenants can tell you, I don't know what page it's on in here, and I don't want to go through all of this right now, but at some point in the restrictive covenants, it's going to tell you what the homeowners association dues were supposed to be at the beginning, and it's going to tell you how much they could be raised each year. This is not where you want to get your information to put in the MLS. If you can't find it anywhere else, okay. But I don't know too many places where the restrictive covenants are correct. A lot of times, like we were just looking at the landing in Mill Creek, and it says that the homeowners association dues in 2006 or whenever they started were supposed to be $1,140 a year. They're $600. It's nowhere close to that. And I've seen it, and it goes the other way too, because if you are 6 years into a build and the restrictive covenants say that the homeowners dues are $100 a month and can go up 20% a year, but you're 8 years down the line, you don't know if that $20 a year has gone into effect yet or anything like that. So you do need to reach out to the HOAs and ask them, again, in writing, what the dues are for this year and what they cover, okay? But the restrictive covenants are a good place to start on that. Okay, so we've been in here, and every time I've looked at book page, I've gone to this one up here that says book page. What it says next to it is 1977 to current. That is a year, 1977 as in the year, not some sort of book number. This, 1734 to 1976, are also years. We have records from 1734 in here, okay? Where this becomes important on restrictive covenants is, let's say that you were looking up a deed and it said restrictive covenants. Here, I'm gonna go back actually. So it said that there were restrictive covenants and the book and page number was 482-164. Okay, so we came in here and we did 482-164 and we get an error message, or it returns us to some sort of deed of trust or something weird, and we're like, huh, that's odd. Okay, well maybe that's not the right number. The other option besides the attorney mistyping it into that deed or wherever you found that number may be that these restrictive covenants were recorded before 1977. So that's where I would go next. This is a different way of searching, and again, this is all on the sheet that we're going to give you, so don't worry too much about it. But this is the book and this is the page. With the book, you have to scroll down. So we're going to scroll down to 482 and page 164. Then when we hit search, and it decides it wants to go, it's going to come up on here. Magically, come on. You'll notice on these that, okay, so everything that we've looked at before, with nice fresh copies of everything, these might not be quite as fresh. They've been scanned in off of microfiche and all kinds of other stuff too, but these are restrictive covenants, okay? So there are restrictive covenants that are in the older sections. All right. Oh, I didn't need to do that. Let's see if I can, no, okay. Okay, one thing that I do want, there's all kinds of cool stuff in here. If you look far enough back, you'll see that they were written out in script, like all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty neat if you're ever, you know, a little bit bored and you want to start going through some of these old records. It's amazing what they have. One thing that I do want to show you though, and it's the last thing I'm going to show you on restrictive covenants, is this. Okay, and we talk about, so these restrictive covenants were from like 1943, okay? And this is in Jacksonville. It's in Overbrook. Where'd it go? Sorry, I'm making you all dizzy again. Sorry, guys.
There's 600 pages.
No, so they do a running tally. So it may start like the new restrictive covenants for this one may start halfway down a page. So it's just a running record. So it's this, the entire book of 198 has 600 pages in it.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Yep. So this right here, number H, or letter H. No persons of any race other than Caucasian shall occupy any building or lot, except if they are domestic servants. Yeah, so those used to be in our restrictive covenants back in the 40s. So just because it says that in here does not mean that it holds. Partially because of things like this: invalidation of any one of these covenants by judgment or court order shall in no wise affect the other provisions. So that particular provision was wiped out with the Equal Rights Amendment. That does not hold. Nobody can hold anybody to that. But just because that one section gets blocked out doesn't mean that the rest of these, so there still might be limits to how big the house can be or how small it can be or anything like that. So just because one section of the restrictive covenants gets knocked out doesn't make the entire restrictive covenant invalid, okay? So those are just some things to kind of keep in mind. All right, so that's pretty much it on restrictive covenants. Like I said, they're super important. You should be looking them up for absolutely every listing you have. It is a required, or it is a material fact. All right, so the last thing that I want to do on here, again, we're back to OnslacountyNC.gov. We're back down here to e-services, and this time we're going to go to search permits and plans. Okay, and again, this is all on the sheet. It'll take you step by step through all of this. This site takes forever. So what we're doing here is pulling septic permits. The cool thing about this site is now for newer builds, they're also putting sewer permits and some other stuff in here. So like I said, this site is much more useful for newer builds. That's most of what we do. Most of what we do is new construction. So I'm on here all the time. So once you find this screen finally comes up, you're going to go to search public records, and then we wait again because all of these screens take forever. But yeah, for new construction, you will be able to pull, and not even new construction, but also newer construction, probably maybe 2013 and up. You'll be able to pull the septic permits from here. You'll be able to get the blueprints. You'll be able to get the CO, the building permits, the plot plans, like all these things that are super important to knowing about the property are all going to be uploaded in here, including if they are in an area that has a sewer permit. Sorry, now we're here and to permit. And then we're going to type in the address. So let's do. Okay, on here, again, you want as little information as possible. You don't want to put court, drive, whatever, because it will throw it off. So just address, just the address, just the street number and the street name, and it'll pull up as much as possible. Okay, while we're waiting for that, like I said, you will be able to pull up sewer permits on here too, which is cool. So these are everything that comes up. So there's a lot of them. So all of these things are different records. You have the operation permit, you have the construction authorization. This one has had a gas line run through for the fireplace, so it has a gas and fuel one. So all of these things are great. Up here, you'll see that one of these is expired. So this improvement permit is the first thing, and that one's expired, but that's not necessary anymore. So when you get permits on houses, the very first thing you get is an improvement permit, and you'll be able to see most of the septic details on that. The next one after that, sorry, these aren't in order, then you'll get an operations permit, then you'll get a construction authorization, and then you'll get all the building permits and everything. So when you're looking at all of these, you can see that these are, this one was issued in 2017, this was in 2014, 2017 again. You want the newest one, okay? And what I would suggest looking for is one that instead of having the improvement permits or whatever, if you can find one that says residential building, this is gonna have everything in it. So this is the one that you want. So if you can get the RBLD, residential build set, this is the one that's gonna have the most information. If it's a new enough build, like they've just broken ground, you may only be able to get the like improvement permit or anything. But if it's a house that's fully completed, you should be able to get this residential build. Okay. And now we have to wait for this screen. We're not going to go through a ton of these because these screens are so slow. So I'm just going to kind of try to describe a lot of this stuff. This little thing has to stop running, and then the attachments will come up. And again, don't worry about what buttons I'm clicking on. It's all on the sheet that you're going to get. I'm just trying to hurry this along a little bit because this takes so long. Okay, so here are all the attachments that come up. So like I said, you get tons of information. This is your termite information. So this is when it was pre-treated. Here's the actual septic permit. This is the certificate of occupancy, or CO. This says that the house is ready to be lived in. This is, the lender's always going to need this if it's new construction. Certificate of compliance is given the same day. This is the plot plan. There was an engineering letter. These are the blueprints. So like I said, all of these things, if I had a buyer that was looking at this house, I would be printing out or saving every one of these things and giving them everything. This is all public records. If you can see it, I don't see a reason why your buyer shouldn't be seeing this too. Give them the most amount of information you can. Okay, so the first thing I want to click on here is the plot plan. Plot plans can give us a lot of information as well. Can you guys see this one?
Yes.
Okay, good. So again, if you had a house that pulled up in here, this is the other place where wetlands appear. This particular one doesn't have any, but if there were wetlands on this, they would usually appear on the plot plan as well. So the cool thing about plot plans is it's going to show you the position of the house. Should be about to scale if it is this, if it's a recorded version. So if it's got the recording stuff on it, this should be about where it is. It's going to show you where the septic system is and where the repair area is. For those of you who don't know, if your people have said the words, I want a pool, they're going to either need to put their pool right here or way back here in the corner, which they probably can't do because this is a minimum building line. Okay? If they wanted to put the pool here, there is not a septic system right there right now. But if any part or this entire septic field fails, this repair area is where the county is going to move that septic system, and they are going to have to move the pool, fence, shed, whatever they have put that's touching anywhere near there. So do not let your clients build on obviously the septic field because that would do some damage, but also not in the repair area because the chances of anything failing are pretty small. But if it happens and anything is built on that area, they're going to have to move it at their own expense. Okay? So plot plans are pretty cool. What we're really talking about are the septic permits though. So lots of good information on septic permits. We are going to have Adam Locklear do a class. We're actually trying to convince him to do one in this kind of Zoom setting, but if we can't get that up and running, as soon as we get back up and running where we can have classes in person, he'll be doing that. And he'll be able to go over how to read these even better than what I'm going to tell you. But again, you've got the addresses, all of that stuff. The very first thing that we as real estate agents probably are looking at is this right here, 4-bedroom, okay? This house actually does have 5 rooms that could be considered bedrooms in it. We cannot list this house as a 5-bedroom house. It can only be listed in the MLS as what is on the septic permit, okay? So as much as I may want to call this a 5-bedroom, unless my clients are willing to go through the expense of adding another septic line, this is a 4-bedroom with a bonus room that can be used as a bedroom. You can call it whatever you want that way, but you need to call it a 4-bedroom, okay? So the other thing that you could be looking for, terms that you might be looking for on septics and everything are things like off-site, which means that the septic system is going to be, you know, not in their backyard. It's going to be somewhere else in the subdivision. That can be good, that can be bad, that can be anything. But if it on the good side, they can use their entire backyard for anything that they want. On the bad side, they don't have 100% control over that. And if some teenager decides to go off-roading in the off-site septic field, they could do tons of damage to a lot of septic systems. Does that happen very often? No. The other thing to be aware of on off-site, that if your people, if you have buyers and it's an off-site septic system and they decide to do a survey, they're probably going to have to pay for 1.5 to 2 surveys because the surveyor is going to have to survey their lot and they are also going to have to survey the off-site system. So just kind of something to put in the back of your mind. You'll also see things that say like mound system, peat system, all kinds of stuff, and I'll let Adam explain those a little bit better. But if it's a non-conventional system and it fails, it can be expensive to redo. So again, if your people are between 2 different systems and they don't want a big mound in their backyard, maybe don't look at the house that has a mound system. if they don't want some $40,000 septic system to have to replace, maybe that's not the house for them. What I was saying before is kind of cool. So new construction is now doing sewer permits in here as well. So this is the intention to provide sewer service. So Onwassa is going to provide the sewer for this house. Again, that's one of the required fields on Flex. So that's good to know. You now know who's going to do that. And then this is the final sewer. Okay. Number of bedrooms, 4. It's not just septics that have things like this on them. Now it is a lot more inexpensive to add a line to a sewer service than it is to a septic. With septic, they actually have to dig into your yard, add lines, add them to the tank, all of that. Really, for them to come out and add another line to a sewer is, you know, basically turning a nozzle saying, okay, you have enough backflow for 5 bedrooms now, not 4, but it's still going to cost them $1,000 or $2,000 to do if they need to get that up. But just do be aware that some sewers are now giving number of bedrooms. So again, if this house has 5 rooms that can be used as bedrooms, and you're seeing even on a sewer permit that it's calling it a 4-bedroom house, I'd be very wary about listing that as a 5-bedroom without calling Onwassa and seeing what it would take to add that 5th line. Okay. All right. And like I said, there's just tons of stuff in here, but like I said, where it says approved plans, those are the actual blueprints for the house. So if your people are doing, you know, anything where they're adding on to houses or anything like that, that can be super useful to them. If it's in public records, I don't see any reason why your people can't have that. All right. So the last thing that I want to go over today are the roads. So we talked about public and private roads. So this is NCDOT. Okay, this is the DOT website. This is the most up-to-date information on whether you have a public or private road. You can send this to Navy Fed or any other lender as well. They should be looking at the same thing I am, but I don't know. But this is the most up-to-date. So when you're in here, there's a couple things, and this is all on the sheet, so don't worry about taking too many notes. Do be aware that this is the entire state, so you can be looking at Pender County or something in here too. If you only want Onslow County, you can click that, and this will only give Onslow County results. Right here where it says road number, that is not a street number. That is a road number, so do not put 123 and then Main Street down here. That is not what that's for. The road name is what you're looking for, okay? So let's say I'm looking for Goldeneye in Mimosa Bay. All I want to type in, the actual address of this house is 111 East Goldeneye. I want the most amount of results first, so I am only typing in Goldeneye. You hit submit, no records found, okay? That is my indication that I need to go back to that plat map and look. And if I were to go back to Mimosa Bay's plat map, I would see that these are private roads. Okay, so there's a good indication. So let's do, so Mango in Camden Woods. The actual name of the street is Mango Place South. So if I were to type all of that out and hit submit, I'm going to get a no records found. Okay, so let's try just with an S. Still nothing. Okay, Mango PL. Oh, now we're getting somewhere because that's what made it happy. But look what it did. When DOT put this in Mango Place North, they spelled it all the way out. When they put it in for South, they did the abbreviated versions. So if I were to have just typed in Mango and made it easy on myself from step 1, I would have gotten these right away, and I would have seen that both of these streets are state maintained. Okay, this is the road number. If you look at state maintained street signs when you're going into a neighborhood, it will have Mango Place North or Mango Pool South, whatever they're going to put in there, however abbreviated it's going to be. But there's also going to be a little sign that shows that number. That means that it's a state maintained road. There's many things that are good about state maintained roads. It does mean that that most lenders can lend on it. What it also means is that school buses can drive down it. If you live in a new construction neighborhood, or if you live in a neighborhood where you've been told that the school bus can only come to the front of the neighborhood, it's because they do not know that those streets have been turned over to the state yet. If you live in a new construction neighborhood, they don't get all turned over at the same time. So within this same neighborhood, the street right next to Mango is, not Mango, Piedmont. It's just Piedmont. The street right next to Mango has not been turned over yet because that street, Piedmont itself, is not finished. They are still building on it. So the developer is still maintaining Piedmont itself. But if you, but it will be. And if you look at the plat map, the other thing that it'll say on like that plat map is these roads are intended to be turned over to the state. So if you see that blurb on a plat map, let me try to pull one of those up real quick. So if I'm looking at this plat map and I was here in roads and Piedmont didn't come up, and now I'm panicking that my lender's not going to loan money on this house. If I come in here and I start reading through all of this, here we go. I'm going to blow this up for you. Okay. All streets hereon have been offered to the state for dedication, have not been accepted to the state at this time. This right here means that it is the developer's intention to build the streets correctly so that they can be turned over to the state as soon as building is complete. If you are getting hassle from Navy Fed or any other lender saying that the house your people want to buy on Piedmont is a private road, I would send them this blurb. I would send them the whole plat map showing Piedmont's here, showing Mango's here, and showing Gilchrist is here. And you can pull up Gilchrist and it's public. But look what it says right under there, Piedmont Court, public. They are intending to turn this over to the state as soon as all these houses are built. It just hasn't happened yet. So between this blurb up here saying that it's the intention, this right here saying it's public, and possibly even this screen here saying that the street that's attached to it is turned over to the state, all of that should be enough to convince Navy Fed that that house is okay to lend money on. If it's not, find your people a new lender, okay? But again, if you know this at the beginning of the transaction instead of 2 days before closing when Navy Fed starts sending you panic letters saying, oh my gosh, this is private roads, we can't do this, you would have known all of this and you would have been able to send them in your proofs early enough in the process that they could have approved that well in advance. Does that make sense? Okay, so the last thing that I want to show you on here, and it's just something that people forget about, what we were looking at, that NCDOT map, are state maintained roads. Oops, can't spell. Oh my gosh. Okay. This house, going back to the very beginning, it's in pink, so that means it is in the city limits, and this happens to be city limits of Jacksonville. This is downtown, okay? So the name of the street is Warlick. If I were to go in here, I know that these streets are maintained. I type in Warlick, no records found. Do not panic. No, they are not state maintained. They are city maintained, okay? So if you're inside the city, you don't need to do this extra trek for roads database. If they're inside city limits of Jacksonville, they're maintained by the city. So you can just skip this step on the roads altogether, okay? But just be aware that people do that and they panic back and forth because they're like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with the street? And there's nothing wrong with the street. It's city maintained. It's just something that people forget.
Is that also for like Richlands, Holly Ridge?
Yes, yes. Holly Ridge is the one that's just a little bit different sometimes. So my problem with Holly Ridge is you get a lot of these where you are paying the town of Holly Ridge taxes because you're in one of these pretty pink areas, but you'll still have a septic system and you still have to check for plat maps and road maintenance and all kinds of stuff. Holly Ridge is just a little bit extra on some of theirs. But again, if it's in a neighborhood, the plat map's going to show who it's maintained by and all of that kind of stuff, and you can look it up. And I think, let me see.
So you're kind of telling us if it's in Jacksonville, we're good to go, but any of the
Yeah.
smaller towns, you probably need to check.
Yeah, I'd still check. Yeah, because it's not showing up on here, but it's more with the sewers and stuff than it is with the road maintenance. But yeah, I just Jacksonville city limits, you're good to go. I mean, Wilmington city limits, actual, cities, but when it's town of Richlands or town of Holly Ridge, those are not city maintained necessarily. There is, even in North Carolina, there's a difference between cities and townships.
Great.
All right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that is it for my lists of everything. And I'll open it up for questions again and all of that kind of stuff if anybody has any more questions. If you don't and you want to get off of here, I know we've been on here for a long time, you are welcome to go. Heather is going to be sending out an email to the attendees with all of these, with the handouts and all of that. So if you had to leave early or whatever, obviously you're not listening, so you wouldn't know that, but you'll still get all of that stuff, and that's fine. If you're listening to this recorded, and you would like those handouts, please let Miss Heather at JBoard know that you would like those handouts. If you have any questions at all after this ends, please feel free to contact me. If you go into Flex and look up my name, you'll be able to come up with phone numbers and email addresses and all of that. You could also ask Heather and she'll give you my information. I'm always happy to help with any of that. This is the first time we've tried to do something like this on Zoom, and I know it's a little bit different than when we're in person, but we do really want to be able to help with anything. I'm trying to think if there were any other. We do want to do a second part to this. So we kind of went over everything today. I was going to hold off on septics and RCs and all of that, but I just figured we'd kind of go over everything while we were on here. But if we need to get into specifics or anything like that, if you guys will leave feedback and just let us know if you want something specific, like if you want to do just a Zoom on restrictive covenants or just a Zoom on anything in particular or whatever, I am happy to do that kind of stuff too. We just need to know what you guys want and we will go from there, but we're happy to do as many of these as anybody wants, even if there's only 2 people attending. If you want more information on septics or restrictive covenants and you want to do it in this forum where we can go back and forth and screen share, absolutely happy to do that. We just need to know that that's what you want. Okay, so were there any actual questions on
I don't
where
see
I
any
was on the
questions,
screen?
Amy, but lots of thank yous. Lots of appreciation for this class and your knowledge. So thank you for helping us out.
Great. Okay. Sorry, I thought I heard a voice coming up. Okay, well, we will let everybody go, but thank you all for attending, and please do feel free once you get that that handout to share it with absolutely anybody that you want to share it with, need to share it with. If you want to talk about it at team meetings, if you want more clarification for everything before you do that, please let me know. But really, everything can help. We just want to maintain the quality of data that's going into Flex and being shared around between agents, and this is a great way to start. We really do need to know about the property, not just the house.
We'll get this all uploaded. We'll share it on our YouTube channel. We'll probably post it on our Facebook page. And we also have a site dedicated to education, specifically designation, certifications, anything that we're offering, local schools offering CE. As you know, most CE classes, all CE classes currently are being offered virtually. So we will share it on that as well. And I'll include that link when I send out the handouts and the hyperlink to that wonderful site that Amy was talking about that Al Wagner put together at the beginning of the class. So I'll get all of that compiled and send you guys an email here shortly.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Heather, for doing all of this. We
No,
miss
thank
you
you.
guys.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.